Hey everybody, KC here. So Dr. Mindy Weinstein is a marketing expert. She is the founder of an organization called Market Mindshift, which focuses on digital marketing. And she's a marketing instructor at Grand Canyon University. She's a program leader for the Wharton School and the Columbia Business School. And she is just out with a brand new book called The Power of Scarcity, Leveraging Urgency and Demand to Influence Customer Decisions. And this is a really, really interesting book because it talks about both manufactured scarcity as well as sort of the scarcity that results from just circumstance, like, a pandemic, supply chain problems, things like that. And I think it's really, really interesting because I think it's something that actually supermarket retailers don't use enough. The ability to have manufactured scarcity where they have exclusives, where things are only available for a certain time, as a way of kind of driving customer loyalty. So we did a little Zoom conversation. We talked about the book. We talked about lots of different examples. We talk about McDonald's McRib. We talk about Dorothy Lane Market, the Ford Bronco, lots of different examples. And I think it's a really good discussion on how retailers can use scarcity to drive customer loyalty. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Mindy Weinstein. Well, Mindy Weinstein, welcome to Morning Newsbeat.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
My pleasure. I thought this was a really, really interesting book, The Power of Scarcity. And because it dealt with a lot of stuff, a lot of it had to do with marketing, but there was also the psychology behind it, which I really want to kind of get into. So talk to me a little bit about why, in your research, both from a marketing perspective and from a psychological perspective, why do people just prefer scarce items to items that are abundant?
It is so fascinating. And I'm going to answer that question, but what I'm about to answer also gives insight into why I even wrote this book. Because I get that question a lot of all the things to focus on, you chose scarcity. That was where you decided to put your flag in. So here's the thing is that when it comes to how we're wired, our brains are hardwired to want to overcome any type of scarcity. And it's something that's primal. So think about our ancestors. They had scarce resources trying to survive. They had food they were going after and shelter. Now, fast forward to where we're at now, our brain still doesn't tell the difference between, okay, this is a product drop or this is a limited edition, something, a good to get. Our brain still thinks, oh, that's scarce, I need to get it. So we've actually seen through brain scans that when faced with scarcity, and I'm talking about scarcity where it's like a limited time promotion or scarcity where it could be an auction simulation, that our brain does certain things where one, our brain skips to the valuation process, meaning that our brain turns to this is scarce. This must be valuable. And when I say scarce, it could be a limited edition, limited time product. It could be just something that's on sale. Or the other thing that happens too is that we skip the normal steps that we would take in the decision-making process. And so that's why in marketing and sales, scarcity is so powerful.
Yeah, part of it is just right. If other people must want it, I should have it. There's that. At one point you wrote in the book, there's four things, right? There's the good that can contribute to scarcity. There's the just the inherent value in terms of the characteristic of the product. There is people, the brain focuses on what it can't or doesn't have. Scarcity also simplifies decision making, which I found really interesting. That right, I don't have to decide between three things. If the third thing is the thing that's most scarce, I just automatically go to that.
Absolutely.
And then fear of missing out, right? Which is something that so many people are I was going to say afflicted by. I think it can be an affliction, right? If you're just so concerned about missing out that you just have to do certain things. So it's interesting what drives people to want to grab that thing that they may not be able to have.
No, it's huge. And what you just said, when I talked about the valuation process of your brain, is that our brains, so stepping back and thinking about it, we're bombarded with information. I mean, we just are. And so our brains are always looking for mental shortcuts, even more so in the day and age that we live in. So with what you're talking about, when we see something either marked by a retailer online that this is a bestseller or it's nearly sold out or that it was restocked, we automatically think, oh, this must be really good, because why else would so many people want to buy it? So it's that equation that we do so quick, and it's a mental shortcut. So our brain is always looking for those shortcuts. Or you think about when you go to the grocery store, if you're not sure what to buy, you're probably going to pick the product that's almost sold out if the price is about the same, because you're like, oh, well, that many people are buying it. So again, it must be good.
But to a certain, yeah, I would buy that, except for the fact that during the pandemic, did that rewire our brains? Because almost everything was scarce during the pandemic to some degree, right? It was just difficult to get product. There are a lot of retailers out there who pat themselves on the back because they sold so much stuff during the pandemic. My reaction is always, wasn't hard to sell things during the pandemic, right? If it came in the back door, you could pretty much count on sending it out the front door.
Right.
But did the pandemic rewire our brains at all? I mean, I wonder how many of us still have stashes of toilet paper and paper towels in our basement just in case.
You know what? And it was actually the whole run on toilet paper that made me even want to write the book, because I'd already been studying scarcity and it was part of my PhD. And then seeing all that, like, oh my gosh, and watching it, all this theory, that in these experiments we've done to actually see it play out. But it actually exasperated it a bit. And I feel like now we even have more of that fear of missing out, because we're still in that mindset of, gosh, things did sell out. We did try to go to the store and we did try to sell or buy toilet paper and it wasn't there. And so now if there's anything like that where we think something could run out, or again, it's just out for a limited time, what I have seen is that we're reacting even more. So it exasperated it in a bit. So because we experienced it. And so now our brains are like, well, I don't want that to happen again. And so the fear of missing out, I mean, I know we just call it FOMO, but it's real and it's big. And so we don't want to experience any type of loss, even a loss where, hey, you might not be able to buy that particular product today. It's still that feeling of we lost something.
It's interesting. I hadn't even thought about it. Of course, you were writing this book during a pandemic that created scarcity. That would have been as if you were writing a book about a pandemic and a pandemic started, right? I mean, the timing was absolutely perfect in terms of being able to study how people would react to the scarcity of items.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a real life, you didn't have to do any kind of simulation or testing or study, like watching it play out and how people are reacting. And then you just saw, of course, we know with supply and demand. I mean, people were trying to sell toilet paper. There was one thing, and I think I included it in the book too. There was a convenience store that was accepting toilet paper as currency. So things changed a little bit. Value change. Who would have known, right?
There's a joke in there about money not being worth something, but I'm not going to go there. So there were some examples that you cite in the book, which I think are really interesting. One is the McRib sandwich. That McDonald's has been very savvy about only bringing that puppy out every once in a while as a way of driving sales.
Yeah. And so I actually have a couple of examples with McDonald's, because of course they have their Shamrock Shake too, And so I was able to interview the former VP of global marketing for McDonald's. He'd been with the company for 40 years. And of course I asked him about the McRib. That was what was on my mind. I'm like, okay, let's talk about the McRib, because that's scarcity. It comes out for a limited time, then it's gone and you don't know where it's going to show up. And I thought it was really interesting how McDonald's goes about it. And so his name is Dean that I interviewed, and he said, McDonald's is all about creating fun and excitement. That's why the McRib doesn't always come out the same time of the year. It's sporadic. The location in which it's going to come out is sporadic. You don't know what to expect. And then you think about it now, there's so much excitement that when it comes out, people are tracking them. There's apps, there's websites, my husband's a little bit addicted to McRib. Maybe that's why I was so interested in it. Every time we drive by McDonald's, he's like, what if we drove by right now and there was a McRib? Like, what if there was? And so, there was just the final McRib tour, if you know that, and this last fall, but I think it's their 5th farewell tour. So I think we're probably
that's
okay.
Like Elton John's farewell. That's like Elton John's farewell tour. It's been going on since 1978, it's always, but it's such an interesting point. I don't think I've been to McDonald's. I can't even tell you the last time I went to a McDonald's. And I never get a craving when if I were to drive by a McDonald's. But if I saw a sign that said McRib, because I can remember having, I think I had a McRib 20 years ago, probably the last time. But if I saw a sign to McRib, I would get a stirring in my. I would have a moment. I don't know if I do it, but I would have a moment. Like,
Right.
I wonder if they're still as good as they used to be, kind of thing.
Right,
You know?
right. Well, just on a side note, fun fact for you, this last farewell tour they had, people were selling the McRib sandwich, actually the sandwich on eBay. So someone had it listed for $5,000. I don't know if it's sold, and I don't even know how that works because I don't think you'd want to eat it, but it was pretty
Well,
entertaining to see that.
that's proof of the decline of Western civilization, if you ask me. But and I wonder when I read that, I wondered if Chick-fil-A, another
Mhm.
fast food company, I wonder if and listen, I understand why they close on Sundays, right?
Right.
But I wondered if, and that's for religious reasons, family reasons, that sort of thing. But
Mm,
I also wondered if in some ways it does play into your scarcity thing, right? You can only get it 6 days a week. You can't get it on Sunday. And I wonder
true.
if they're actually tapping into that same psychological thing.
And it could be. And again, like you said, I know it's for religious reasons, but they're still one of the top grossing
Right.
fast food chains out there. So it definitely is not hurting them financially. And I do think there's got to be a bit of that of, okay, yeah, it's Saturday. I better make sure I get it today because I won't be able to get it tomorrow. And it goes back to the whole idea of we don't want any kind of loss. The other thing, and I won't get too into the academic side of things, but
That's all
there's
right.
something
I can handle it.
okay, there's something referred to as reactance theory. And reactance theory means that when we are told no or something's a little bit more difficult for us to get, we have a physiological reaction to it. I mean, teenagers, actually, if I just say that, they're like the biggest ones with reactance theory. You
All
think about
kids.
it, yeah, all
All
kids,
kids.
you tell them no and they want to do it even more, they probably will do it. And so, but we're the same way as adults. It's the same thing. And so we have a physical reaction. So if something is hard to get,
Right.
which again is scarcity, then we are going to react and we're going to want to do what we can. And it all feeds together. So the whole thing with like the fear of loss and the reactance theory, hyper focusing, it all intertwines together and is why scarcity is such a big thing. And it's interesting because I feel like with scarcity and when, products and companies are using it, it's even more powerful than it used to be because we're in a digital age. So you're very aware if something was out of stock, is back in restock, if there's a drop, if there's a promotion right now. I mean, we know. And so we're very well aware what's happening.
Well, think about what happened when Ford announced that after 25 years, they were bringing back the Bronco, right? And people
Right.
were
Yes.
lining up to give them $100 on the off chance they might get one early,
Just to
right?
be on the wait list.
Just to be on the
Right.
wait list. It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I I can remember many, many years ago, there was an Irish supermarket chain called Super Quinn, and they had this amazing brown bread. But they would only bring it out, and I'll make up the times because I don't really
Mhm.
remember, but they'd bring it out at 2 o'clock. And when it was gone, it was gone. They weren't going to be, there wasn't going to be more till the next day. And people got trained to come into the store. And that's a hard thing for a lot of retailers to do, right? Retailers, especially in the food business, are sort of trained that it should always be available all the
Mhm.
time. And so but the idea of, hey, listen, we're going to have this, but when you run it, we run out, there's nothing we can do about it. I think that actually helps them in terms of bringing customers into the store.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you talking about that made me think of actually, it was a story I included in the book, and it's a jewelry company. And so they are now a multi-million dollar jewelry company. A lot of celebrities wear the brand. But when I talked to the founder, she had said that her biggest fear was running out of product, which is a lot of fear, when you're in that space.
Right.
And so, but she said that they did run out of product. So they had a hard time keeping it in stock. And that was just, more of just trying to balance everything,
Right.
right? But she said she discovered something by accident. She's like, I realized, we had restocked something. And so we sent out an email and the subject line just said restocked and we sold out of it again. Because all of a
Hmm.
sudden it goes to everything we've been saying of like, okay, well, there's value there. This sold out before. And so you're going to react to it. So then at this point, fast forward, she said she's realized that one of their biggest, I guess, if you say, advantages of their business or their line is that they do sell out, and it's actually a selling point because people know it sells out. They know it's popular. They know that if it's showing right now that it's on, online, it might not be there tomorrow. And so it's turned into a major asset for them. And then fast forward, like I said, they're multi-million-dollar business. And I think our natural instinct is, businesses or marketers is to think, yeah, I don't want to ever run out of stock, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Of course, as long as you back wait list, pre-orders, all of that takes care of that, that fear that you have that, gosh, people might not come back. Well, then do a pre-order, have them be on a wait list. People jump on that.
Broad availability doesn't always mean quality, right? Isn't that, I mean, that was always the problem with Krispy Kreme. I mean, Krispy Kreme was very,
Right.
very popular when the only place you could get them was Krispy Kreme, and that light came on, and suddenly, and you knew they were hot, and people would stop because they knew the light was on. And then when they tried to grow their business by putting their donuts everywhere, fast food, and now they're going back into McDonald's. I don't understand it. They became less special, right? And that,
Right.
and now they also ran into the low carb trend, which didn't help a donut company. But the quality was diminished, and I think that's a huge thing too. When things are scarce, there's an implied quality level to that, I think.
Right. And I mean, because it goes back to the whole value. I mean, again, it's just an equation our brain does is scarcity equals value. It has to be a value. There's quality there. And it's interesting too with what you're saying. I was actually reading an article, and Krispy Kreme was mentioned in it today.
Right.
It was a New York Times article, but talking about how a lot of brands right now are, instead of focusing on doing discounts, they're focusing on creating something that's a premium. And so even Krispy Kreme was mentioned in there too. And so it's the whole idea of what's exclusive or special, because we do want to buy something that we feel like is special. It makes us feel special. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It's psychological. And so, yeah, I mean, that happens. There's definitely the value indicator there.
Now, you told a story in the book about going to Disney World with your kid and getting on the queue, and how hard it was to get on the queue to go what people my age would refer to as the e-ticket ride. Right? They don't exist anymore. People don't even know what e-ticket rides are. But I think I had a somewhat different reaction to the story than you did, in the sense that I felt like you were being manipulated, and that bothered me. And I felt like if I'd been in your situation. Now, if I'm there with two little kids, I might have a different reaction to it. But my reaction was they were manipulating you, and I found that inauthentic, if for lack of a better term. So I mean, first of all, why didn't you feel manipulated if you didn't? And how do you make sure that it's authentic if you're going to make things scarce?
Yeah, no. So that's actually a really good question. Well, when I was traveling with my two sons, so it was definitely getting them on
Changes
this
the
ride.
rules.
It changes because they wanted to get on this ride. But so here's the thing. And so, really the story was trying to get on this ride, and it was still the pandemic was still going on. We were at Disney World trying to get on a ride. They did a virtual queue. And so I was on a wait list to be on the list. It was so ridiculous, which I obsessed about it the whole day. But here's the difference.
You and about probably 100,000 other people.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. And so this is what makes it the fine line with scarcity. You reading that, you're like on the outside going, well, gosh, like, why would you want to go on it? Like, yeah, they're just doing that. It's a ploy. Me being there, I see all the signs that the scarcity truly exists. I see all the people in the park. I see the people as I walk by that ride as they got on, like, because the thing is, once your number's called, you get in another line. It's like you're in a line to get in a line, and then you're in a line. But anyways, I could see people line up. So there was physical proof that this was popular. Now, had I walked by and I didn't see a lot going on, I would have been like, what's happening here?
Right.
And so,
okay. That's fair.
and so and I was going to say in general, I mean, I feel like using it, if you're going to use it in the retail space, scarcity, if you're saying something's running out, well, it better truly be running out. Or if you're saying that, yeah, it's a final sale, or this is the last sale, well, then it should be the last sale. I think about, there's a rug company by me that's been going out of business for the last, I think, 5 years. The closing sale. Those are the kind of things where you don't want to do that.
It's like the Elton John farewell tour.
Yeah. I actually walked by yesterday and I was like, yeah, it's still going out of business, and doesn't look like they have the same amount of products as they did before. But it needs to be genuine. And so that's the thing too. Like when I keep talking about running out stock, things like that, but scarcity can be time related. So it could be like we're talking about the Shamrock Shake and the McRib sandwich, time related. So that could be sales, that could be lots of things. It could be supply related. So you're purposely limiting supply because it is a drop or it's exclusive or you just had a supply issue. It could be demand. And that's where you show something's popular, bestseller, but it could also be a limited edition. And the thing about all of those, they're all scarcity, but our brain is still going to be triggered the same way. It's still something that's like, okay, this is urgent. This is scarce. I better act right now. So you can be genuine. I would definitely advise against making something up because that backfires.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was having a conversation the other day with somebody. They were talking about, testing out e-commerce technology. And and one of the things I had said was, well, you can test how effective it is by sending out a flash text to everybody, all your customers for whom you have cell phone numbers, and say, hey, flank steak's going to be on sale from 4 to 6 tonight, or 5 to 7, whatever it happens to be, while supplies last.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you can test whether that works really easily. And it only occurred to me afterwards that we're also not only testing the technology, you're also testing
Mm-hmm.
the psychology in a lot of ways. It plays
Right.
exactly into what you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you're talking about that. So much is just the wording of things or how you present something. Like you said, while supplies last. There was a study done that the researchers sat in a grocery store and it was for cans of soup. And it was just a promotion like we see at the store where it'll say this price, limit 5, and they just tested out. What if we limit 5? What if we limit 10? What if we don't have any limit at all? So what they found was that, of course, when there was a limit of 10 to get to that price, even though you might have gone for one can,
Right.
you're like, oh, I better get 10 because it's all of a sudden triggered you. And so there's a lot of just small things that just really can make a difference too when it comes to sales.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the authenticity of it, and also you have to. I mean, you use a phrase in there about the fragility of scarcity,
Mm-hmm.
and when I read that, I thought of the Taylor Swift's tickets problem, right?
Yes, right.
Because in that case it backfired, and
Yeah.
all it did was piss everybody off, because it's somehow, even if it was there may be all sorts of legitimate reasons that it happened, it
Mm-hmm.
felt inauthentic to her brand, and it just felt like the ticket company was taking advantage and everybody was going to get screwed on the deal.
Right. I remember because that was when all that happened was in the midst of my book had just come out. So I remember talking about that quite a bit. I know there was different reasons, like you said, that were explained of why it happened like it did. But yeah, I mean, that was something that people were very upset about because it wasn't expected. Like you said, I would agree. It was not on brand. And then there was just the confusion of like, well, what really was the reason? Was it the ticket company? And then of course, in the anger of people who did get them and they were trying to resell them for crazy amounts of money. So there was just a
Yeah.
lot there.
The do you One of the things I also was thinking about as I was reading the book was that it played, in some ways, the notion of scarcity plays into what I think of as not a particularly positive
Mm,
human trait, which is elitism, right?
mm,
That when things are scarce, it tends to be the elite that has access to them, either because they've got somebody else to make the phone
mm.
call for them, they've got faster computers, they can afford to buy tickets from a reseller, they know how to cut the line, all those things. And while I understand the psychology of it, I wonder if it plays into what is not a particularly
Mm.
positive human trait.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I actually look at it as well, the way I refer to it as a need for uniqueness. And so that's also something in our Western culture is that we want to be unique. And it's not always necessarily has to be a status symbol in terms of wealth. It's just having something that not everybody has. And that's definitely something in our society. And especially with self-expression, there's social media, you want to have, whether it's the latest hat, or that's such a bad example.
No,
Latest, whatever. You know
sure.
what I'm saying? Like, I keep using drop because I have boys and it's all about the Nike drop. Like, what's been the latest shoe that's out? But the thing with that is, because self-expression, you want to show something that you have that makes you special. So it makes you unique. And so there's actually a psychological term, and that is need for uniqueness. And so that's what I see more than elitism, like trying to be in that elite mindset. It's, I just want to be different. And so that's what scarcity speaks to, but not all types of scarcity. That's the thing. So that really speaks to what we're talking about, the supply related scarcity or limited edition, because everyone's going to have it. And so you do have people that are going to pay the premiums, or they just were able to wait in line they wanted, but that's the scarcity. Now, time-related scarcity, I mean, talking about flash sales, promotions, that's definitely not in that category of necessarily people who feel like that to be unique. They just want to get something while they can and get that deal. Same thing with popularity, which is that demand-related scarcity. That's more of, I want to conform to everyone else. Everyone's going to this restaurant. I want to go to that restaurant.
Right.
I want to see what's so great about it. And so it's definitely more supply-related and limited edition, but I would put it into the category that need for uniqueness that happens.
So obviously there's some kinds of scarcity over which businesses don't have control, right? Supply chain issues, there's a drought,
Right.
whatever it happens to be. But there are, I mean, obviously there are times, because you're talking about them, where a business can use scarcity to its advantage by establishing its own uniqueness and trying to sort of engineer the culture a little bit. So if you were going to give a retailer advice about how to approach the issue of manufactured scarcity, what would you advise them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a couple things that come to mind, and a lot of them, it's research-based and just practical that I've seen in my career. But doing something as simple as marking something as a bestseller. I mean, that actually allows people to take a mental shortcut. A customer can see this is a bestseller. And that's something that I talked to the founder of 1-800-Flowers about. He said, especially Valentine's Day, all these people are on the site. It's very overwhelming. He goes, so we actually just put a label letting them know which ones are the best sellers, which you obviously know when you do that, you're going to get more sales for that particular product. It doesn't cost you any money to do that. The other thing is being very transparent if something is restocked, because that's going to be a trigger and people are going to buy if you have something like that. But then the other thing, if neither one of those examples really makes sense, is what can you offer that's, exclusive? Maybe it's an exclusive product bundle for right now, or it's an exclusive offer, or if you're brick and mortar, maybe it's an exclusive event that you bring in, certain customers at a certain tier level, that kind of thing. So there's so many things that you can do that are very authentic and will still have that sense of urgency, that sense of scarcity.
That's a really good, that last point I like a lot. There's a supermarket retailer in Ohio, Dorothy Lane Market, one of the best food retailers in the world. And they have always done this holiday show, right? And I don't know what the numbers are. And they would you could sample all sorts of foods, and then they had wines, and you could put in orders for Christmas presents and holiday orders and things like that. But it seems to me that they would only make available maybe 200 or 300 people they would let in, right? And you had to do it in advance. And so it became a really big deal to attend that. And people would show up all dressed up because it was a big deal. And it was basically a merchandising event. But it was a wonderful way of creating a sense of you are the best customers and you're shopping in the best store. And that's a great message.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's what Nordstrom does. They have their holiday sales, and depending on which level you're on, they have this nice event. And it's just what you said. You feel special because it's this VIP event, but really you're shopping. You're there, you're shopping, you're spending.
You're spending money. You're paying for the privilege to spend money.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Right, exactly.
Well, listen,
so it's a win for everybody.
I totally recommend this to the Morning News Beat audience. It's called The Power of Scarcity, Leveraging Urgency and Demand to Influence Customer Decisions. Mindy Weinstein, I really appreciate your doing this today. Good luck with the book. I hope you sell a gazillion of them. I hope it's not scarce. We don't want this scarce. We want this on everybody's shelf.
Buy it while you can.
There you go. Take care. Thanks a lot.